This is Algebra, lesson 9.1a. Okay. All right, here we go. So, graphing a quadratic. A quadratic is, do you remember what that looks like? What's a quadratic look like written out? A quadratic is like ax plus by plus c equals 0. Do you remember? Right? I mean, could the a not be there? Could it just be x plus by, right? I mean, you know the one. Practically, it looks like this, x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Make sense? I mean, that's what a quadratic is. Anyway, let me explain to you what a quadratic looks like when you graph it. Okay? It looks like a U. A quadratic, just very briefly and very quickly, I'm not going to do one yet. We will be doing one. A quadratic looks like a U. And the arrows go forever. Okay? That's what a quadratic looks like. Now, it can be an upside down U. Right? But it is never this. Why is this? No way. Why can that not be? It doesn't pass the vertical line test. It's not a function. Does that make sense? It doesn't. It's not a function. Whereas both of these are functions. They pass the vertical line test. Now, let's talk about this. Okay, we need to go. The parent function of a quadratic, okay? The parent function is f of x equals x squared. That is the parent function. It forms what's called a parabola. You know how I called it a U? That's like kindergarten-like stuff. It forms what's called a parabola. Everybody say parabola. A parabola. It looks like a U, okay? It looks like a U with the tops and the bottoms, like there being arrows here. Does that make sense? They go forever in that general direction. It's not a line. It's not you can see that this is not a line, right? I mean, like at no point is it ever going to be straight, but it does have arrows. It does go forever. Now, so there's the parent function, f of x equals x squared. Standard form is f of x, or you can say y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, right? And then it forms what's called a parabola, right? That's what it looks like. Okay. Before I do that, let's do this. All I'm going to have you do right now is I want you to recognize something. That when I give you this graph here, and I give you that parabola, I want you to be able to tell me, is there a minimum or is there a maximum to this? What I mean by that is this, is when you're dealing with the y-axis, is there a maximum number that there can be, or is there a minimum number there can be? Look at it and think. Is there going to be an answer to have y be a million? Is y ever going to be a million? Yeah, eventually, right, with this guy up here and these guys up here, eventually it's going to go up and it's going to be a million. Agreed? What about, is y ever, so that means, is there a billion? Yeah, is there a trillion, right? I mean, so is there a maximum? No maximum, right? I mean, it goes forever up. Is there a -5 with this graph? Is y ever going to be? No. So therefore, with this one, there is a minimum, right? There is a bottom, right? There's a minimum number. If I gave you this as our parabola, is there a maximum? And you go, yes, the maximum looks like about 3.25. Does that make sense? Is there a minimum here? Is there a bottom to this thing? Is there a minimum to this graph? Does that go down forever? Is there a -1 million? Is there a -trillion? Yeah, right. So there is no minimum. Does that make sense? There's no bottom. So then you just need to recognize that when it's an upside down parabola, or you would call this a negative parabola, there is a maximum, right? There's a max. That's the highest it can be. When there is a right side up or a positive parabola, then there is a bottom, which means there is a minimum. Does that make sense? And there is no maximum. Does that make sense? Just understanding this talk. Okay, I'll give you a very quick rundown, really quick, of what that means, how you figure out when it's a positive and negative. It's this. If I have a 2x squared plus 4x minus 40, okay, I don't even know if that would make sense. This might be prime. Either way, there is a graph for this. This is a right side up parabola. How come? What do you think is the reason? I can look at this and tell you that it's a right side up parabola. No, but how do I know that that is a right side up parabola? It's positive, right? This thing is positive. The leading coefficient, right? The leading coefficient of this baby is a positive number. Therefore, it's a right side up parabola. If I had negative 2x squared minus, 13x plus 38, guess what this is? This one is a negative parabola. It's an upside down parabola because of that negative right there. It's a negative leading coefficient. Makes it upside down. Okay? All right. What we're going to do right now, though, is this. Well, let me jump really quick to this. Some other things you need to know. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Larger, large. Okay. I will draw you a parabola so that we can talk intelligently about it. Okay. Okay, I did my best to draw a parabola. It's very tough to do. It's impossible for us to draw a perfect parabola because it's curved, right? But okay, there is a parabola. Some things you need to know about this is you need to find what is called the vertex. Does anybody know what the vertex of an object is?
Isn't it where two lines come at the very point of the bottom? Like the middle?
Yeah, so let's look at this. Let's find the word vertex here. Where is the word? Where's vertex? Okay, it's right up here at the top of page 525. The shape of the graph of a quadratic function is called a parabola. Parabolas are symmetric about a central line called the axis of symmetry. What that means is this, that there will be a line of reflection on any parabola, on any quadratic function. There will be a line of symmetry that cuts this thing right down the middle. Do you see where the line of symmetry would be on this one? What would you say? How could you tell me what is the line of symmetry here? What would you say the line of symmetry is? You'd say it's x equals 2. The line of symmetry is x equals 2. Does that make sense? Because this is the line of symmetry right here. I mean, that's where x is 2. So that's the axis of symmetry. They call that the axis of symmetry. The lowest point on the axis of symmetry or the highest point, the maximum on the axis of symmetry or the minimum on the axis of symmetry is the vertex. Does that make sense? It says the axis of symmetry intersects the parabola at only one point called the vertex. Okay, so where the parabola actually intersects the axis of symmetry is the vertex. It's the high point or it's the low point. Does that make sense? In this situation, it's the low point. So the vertex here, you would say, is at point 2, 0. Does that make sense? Okay. Something else you can know about this is you want to know the y-intercept. Does my parabola cross the y? Does my parabola cross the y? Do you see my parabola at any point hitting the y? Yes. Where does it hit the y? Right there at 0, 3. Does that make sense? It does cross the y at 0, 3. Let me tell you why that's important. I'm going to tell you something. You can always figure out and you can always graph a parabola if you know 3 things. You only actually need to know 2. You want me to tell you what they are? If all I gave to you was this, I'm going to draw another one down here. If all I gave to you was this, I gave you that was the vertex, and I gave you that this was the y-intercept, you can draw for me the parabola. If I only have to give you 2 points, and you can draw me the parabola, here's why. Look, if this is the vertex, what do we also know is true about it? That it's on the axis of symmetry, right? And if that thing is the axis of symmetry, where it is a perfect reflection, we know that this thing has to be the low, the minimum, so you know it's going to look like this. What else do we know? If this thing is the axis of symmetry, what else do we know? Do we know another point for sure exists? What do we know? What point? 2, 3, right? Because if this thing is one away here, it's one away here. Does that make sense? And so we know that it's going to go like this. There's our parabola. Does that make sense? So knowing where it crosses the y is very important because it allows us to draw the parabola. Does that make sense? If we can figure out the axis of symmetry, and then we can figure out the maximum or the minimum, and we have the y-intercept, then we're in good shape. Then we can draw the parabola. So anyway, let's go back. It's a very big overview of what's happening here, okay? So you need to know the vertex. You find the axis symmetry. That would be the center there, the y-intercept. There it is. That's the 3 things you got to know. All right, so let me do this. I'm going to give you one, and you're going to tell me the 3 things I want to know. All right, let me give it to you. Come on. Again, I'm not drawing it very well. Here's your little miniature quiz here. I want you to tell me the vertex. I want you to tell me the axis of symmetry. And I want you to tell me the y-intercept. Okay, the 1/2 question is there a maximum or a minimum? Oh, and then number 4, I want you to tell me the domain. And number 5, I want you to tell me the range. Okay, so here's the question. The first one, is there a maximum or minimum? So listen, this you just have to wrap your brain around this. And once you get this, so you're looking at it upside down parabola, right? Is there a maximum? Is there a number that it doesn't, is there a highest number when you do this? Is there a highest number? Huh? Yeah, there is, right? I mean, like, you can't do number 10. There's no 10. So that means that there is a maximum here, right? Does that make sense? That there is a maximum. Did you all get that? Maximum? Okay, good. Okay, the vertex. The vertex is actually a point. Okay, the vertex is actually a point. That point is going to land on the axis of symmetry, right? It's going to be on the axis, but okay, in this situation, I drew that point. What point is that? -2, 3, right? So that means that this is -2, 3. That's the vertex. How many of you got that? Okay. Vertex is the maximum. It is the minimum. Okay. The axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the line by which the parabola is reflected, right? It's the center of this thing. What is that line? What would you say it is? Did you say -2? That's no good. What is the answer? X equals -2. Does that make sense? X equals -2. That's the axis symmetry. Okay? You would have to. On your homework, on your quizzes and tests, yes, you would have to. Number 3, the y-intercept. Where does this thing cross the y? It crosses, you could say the y-intercept, I don't care if you say it crosses at 1. The y-intercept is 1. But whatever, you could say 0, 1, right? But it crosses here at 1. That's the y-intercept. 1. Okay, number 4, domain. What does domain mean again? What does domain mean? All the numbers that x can be, right? So going these directions, right and left, all the numbers that x can be. What's range mean? All the numbers that y can be. Agreed? Okay, so then now let's look at this. Left and right. We're talking about left and right. X. Do you agree that the longer this thing goes down, the further steep that goes down, the steeper that slope's going to get? Do you agree with that? That it is getting steeper. As it goes further down, it's getting steeper. However, it is, with this one right here, do you agree that it is still continually going to be going to the left? Even though it's going to be getting steeper, it is going to continually go to the left. Would it eventually get to 1,000,000 over here? Over here? It would. It would just be way down there, but it would get there. What about 1,000,000,000? It would. Does that make sense? So, what about over here? It's still going to the right. It's still going there. It's going down way faster than it's going to the right, but it's still going to the right. So therefore, what is the domain? It's going forever that way, and it's going forever that way. All real numbers, right? It's all real numbers. If I asked you for the range, it's all real numbers. You could say all numbers until you get to about trigonometry, and then they start dealing with imaginary numbers. But we just say all real numbers. Okay? What about the range? The range is all the numbers that y can be. There is a maximum. What's the maximum? 3, right? The maximum number that y could be is 3. Therefore, what is the range? That means that it can't be higher than 3. That means that it's 3 and lower, right? So you would say that y, right, because range is y. Y is less than or equal to 3. Does that make sense? Y is less than or equal to 3. Okay? I'll show you this. We won't have time to do one today, but how you graph, how the most rudimentary and simplistic way of graphing a quadratic is to make a table, right? That's the deal. When you're going to graph something, you make a table. So, here's my table. If I make a table and I give you this, it's x and y again, and I give you this 1, 5, 0, -4, -1, -7, -2, -4, and -3, 5. You literally graph this. You just graph it. Let's graph it. Okay. We have, oops, I'm going to redo that. That's ugly. Okay, the first one is 1, 5. 1, 5 right here. The next one is 0, -4. Oh my goodness. 0, -4. Way down here. -1, -7. That's like way down here. It's off the chart. And then there is -2, -4. And then there is -3, 5 back up here. Do you see the parabola? That's how you graph a parabola. When you do this, it's very important that you have to, in order to graph a parabola, you actually have to find the vertex. If you don't find the vertex, listen, what up on this? Do you agree that this right here, well, here's the way you avoid this is how you avoid making sure you get the vertex. If you have to go, you can't choose numbers like -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4 for x, because if that's true, then what if you miss the vertex? What if your vertex is an odd number? You won't know where to go down to the bottom. Does that make sense? You just won't know. So anyway, that's not the point. When you do your homework tonight, I believe that they just have you do the same thing. Okay, yep, you got to just make a table. I am going to have you do it, and I'm going to have you do your best on it. When it gets these right here, y equals 2x squared plus 4x plus 6, or minus 6. This is number 1. Relax, people, relax. This is number 1 on page 531. How do you make a table? What do? You make x and y. What else? You got to choose 5. X and y. Now what do? What do? What numbers do I put in? I would say -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Those are the numbers that you pick for x. That's the numbers you pick for x. If, when you do this, if it doesn't come out pretty, I won't fault you, as long as you've entered -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Remember, you're plugging in -2 right here and right here. You know you've done it right if what happens? What's it going to form? It's going to form a parabola, right? It's going to form a parabola. So anyway, that's part of your homework, is you plugging it in. Whatever this comes out to for y, there's one point, there's another point, there's another point. You've done this part before. I'm not worried about you doing this part. All right. I'll give you your homework. What I don't want to see is you people not giving an effort here. Does that make sense? I really want to see, I'm only giving you 8 questions. I want to see you do your best on them. It's page 531, 1 through 8 all.